The rules of sales keep changing, but the rules of establishing trust have always remained the same. Welcome to Bridging Generations in Sales and Outreach. Uh, I'm Butch Nicholson, and I'm your host today. Uh, this is where all generations can come and understand that they have to meet buyers where the buyers are to build the trust that needs to be built. So I'm happy today to have Patrick Elliott on as a guest. Patrick and I are members of the same professional group, and Patrick is a really smart guy. So I'm glad to have him on today, and he has some. I would say he has some different but very important insight onto what's been happening over the last 5, 6 years. So, Patrick, welcome to the show. Take a minute to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Butch. Good morning. Thanks for having me on, and thank you for the compliment. I have a lot to live up to now with that endorsement early on. So, real quick, I have 20 to 21 years roughly of sales and marketing experience. I've sold financial products, managed relationships in investment firms. I've done product and brand management for pharmaceutical companies, medical supply companies, healthcare IT. And I've also had extensive work in business to business technology and SaaS. I led marketing at two different SaaS companies that had pretty strong levels of success. So over my career, I've had some diverse experiences, but what everything I've done has really helped shape for me is the intersection of sales and marketing as revenue departments, as well as how to communicate, sell, uh, create trust among very, very different types of buyers and decision makers within all those industries.
That's certainly a diverse background. Um, so, one of the things we talked about, and I've heard you talk about before, is that the attention economy has ended, and we're moving into it to a new economy. But let's talk about or I'd like you to talk about the attention economy and how that's almost obsolete now.
Yeah, thanks, Butch. Great question. These are terms that I've used pretty frequently of late. I've had a real kind of light bulb moment over the last several months as I've been thinking about, like, we know things are different right now, but how do you really define what these differences are? And this whole attention economy versus value economy idea that I have has come out of that thinking. So when I say attention economy, what I mean by that is really over the upwards of 20 years, we've had an environment where sales and marketing teams have been rewarded by having incredible volumes of content and presence within a marketplace. And they've been rewarded with that by seeing really strong revenue growth and performance just based on a volume kind of a play. Um, I believe there are two reasons that had happened and that had been rewarded. And they're somewhat coincidental to each other. Number one was starting in the mid 2000s, businesses understanding that they needed to digitize their operations. Basic stuff that's fundamental now: CRMs, marketing and sales engines, ERP systems, HRIS systems, accounting, etc. Businesses knew that they had to get something in order to see the massive productivity gains from digitizing those kinds of operations. And if you were a technology vendor, you knew demand was going to be inherent. So you just had to be there and the buyers would appear. Accelerating that trend was zero interest rate policy coming out of the global financial crisis. We had extremely low interest rates for a long time. We had a massive amount of liquidity, and what that did was it really backstopped the companies that were providing the technology solutions while also giving capital to businesses to invest in these kinds of tools. So you had that, money as lubricant to be able to accelerate a trend of, hey, you just got to be there. You got to be in the market, lots of ads, lots of people on the phones, making calls, lots of emails, et cetera. And I think we're at a real inflection point switching from attention to value. And I'm happy to talk a little bit about what I think that means.
Yep. Before you do that, and I definitely want you to address that because I believe 100% that you're correct. Uh, and I believe this has to do with generations also. Uh, Younger generations look at things in a different way. And I know you'll address that as we get into how it's changed. Uh, but when you were talking, I've been in sales for decades, and it was dial and smile for a long time. It wasn't who you were calling. It was just that you were calling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So let's talk.
and yeah, just as an aside, I do think that outbound sales and marketing is still super important. You just have to execute it in a different. I'm sure that we'll talk about that a little bit as well.
Yeah, of course. And I think that I believe for me and what I have experienced is that outbound is still important, but it's very different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So talk about the value of the tell me your experience with the value economy that we've slowly moved to over the
Mm-hmm.
last 5 years, 10 years.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So, quite simply, the two trends that I talked about a couple minutes ago have basically run their course at this point. From a broad digitization standpoint, all of those types of systems that I mentioned, those have, 99% of businesses have adopted some sort of automation for um, operations within their business. So you can only automate from a broad standpoint one time. There's that sort of 0 to 1 jump, and now the changes that somebody would make or a business would make to a system is going to be much more incremental in terms of the impact, and the switching costs are going to be higher. All that sort of stuff, all that sort of economic nerdy stuff that I like. Not everyone likes it. I like it. So that's one thing. And the other thing is just the change in the financing environment. While there's still a lot of investment capital out there, the growth at all costs environment, that zero interest rates and really the rise of PEVC really accelerated in previous years, that I believe is pretty clearly over. Obviously, there's still great opportunities out there. There's great investors, great companies, but if you grow 50% a year and you're not profitable, you can do 50% a year for 5 years. We'll deal with it. That's kind of over at this point. I can say that having talked to investors on a pretty regular basis. So with those two reversals, what we have right now is, and I'm taking this obviously very much from a B2B standpoint, but I think a lot of lessons are for B2C too. If you're a technology vendor or a solutions vendor or a services vendor, and you're calling on businesses or marketing to businesses one way or another, you have a higher burden of proof that you have to put in front of that potential customer to get them to make a move. It wasn't, you really need an automated accounting system. Everybody's got one. The benefits of it are clear. Buy from us. Now it's, you've got all these layers of technology and systems and processes in place, and I can help you do better in a particular way. But now you really have to prove it. You have to provide examples, black and white examples, concrete examples of how you can help from a financial standpoint. You've got to be able to furnish, case studies and peer reviews much more frequently than you used to be able to. And then just the economic piece of it. You don't have this, pile of money that buyers have ready to invest in new tools. You're going to have to convince them it's worth making the investment in terms of the price you're going to pay, but it's also worth the switching costs. It's worth the retraining, things of that nature. It's a completely different environment. But I think the interesting thing is that a lot of sales and marketing professionals, some of which are very smart and very talented, they cut their teeth for most of their career in that attention economy environment, and they've not pivoted appropriately yet to the value economy environment, in my opinion.
Patrick, there's I believe it was McKinsey, had this is a couple years old, but I believe it's still true today that the average B2B buyer is 39 years old. And also, um, they had a study that concluded that the average B2B buyer, who we know is 39, does 70% of their research before they even talk to a salesperson. It used to be you had to talk to the salesperson, or that's the only way you could get information. And now this is all you need to get all the information you want.
Yeah, absolutely. The 70% statistic has been cited. I cannot recall exactly when that became quoted regularly. It's been a few years now. And I haven't seen any concrete updates personally. I welcome anybody to do statistics on this, but I have seen anecdotal comments that 70% is closer to 80 and even in the mid 80s now of the percent of information that decision makers are able to find before they talk to sales or talk to the vendors. And the obvious answer as to why that is because of AI and LLM searches that you're able to do via your AI platform of choice. It used to be that, in B2B tech, we were always thinking about keyword string searches, depending on what kind of solution you're in. Like one of the companies that for which I led marketing was a top billing software in the telecom and managed services industries. So thinking about how people would have done Google searches to find us and alternatives. Now I can go into Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini or whichever I prefer and type in a very natural, like honestly, Butch, it's almost like if you're talking to a salesperson about, hey, what can you tell me about your product? You can basically treat that platform as the information source, but people will trust it as unbiased in a sense because it's scanning the entire internet basically. So it's whatever you need. If you need find me a decent place to eat near my hotel in the city I'm in tonight, all the way to I am looking for an upgrade to my ERP functionality in this way, that way, the other way, and the model will go scrape billions of data points to be able to find at least a start for you of what you're looking to find. So my assumption is that as long as this behavior and practice is in place, that percentage that we talk about of the amount of information that your buyer is going to be armed with before they talk to you is just going to get higher and higher or bigger and bigger.
Yeah, let me ask you this, and I agree with what you said. I believe where salespeople can miss the opportunity is you need to be working with your potential buyers so that when they do that research and they want to verify the research, uh, you're already considered a trusted advisor. So you don't have to be calling them, they'll call you.
Yeah, that's the goal. The process to get there is a little different, but really ever since HubSpot coined the term inbound marketing years back, that is the absolute pinnacle of what you want as a marketing team is the critical mass of opportunities that are created from your marketing activity are inbound, where someone is, depending on what the buyer channels are, maybe some people are still picking up the phone and calling, but be it filling out a request form on a website, hitting an email address, even texting, there's all kinds of different ways to do it. That should be your goal. And if the majority of your opportunities are coming from buyers reaching out to you first, then you're on a really good track, I believe, to succeeding in this new environment.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I believe, and it's been my experience, buyers still want to buy from somebody that they know, like, and trust. I mean, I've heard that my entire sales career. But to your point, and it's very, very different how you do that.
It definitely is. But I do want to say that I completely agree with you on know, like, and trust. And the interesting thing about that in the generational context, I don't think you and I talked about this as we were putting our heads together on this topic previously, but a couple interesting things I've seen just in the last couple of days. One is the just an article about the rethinking of a lot of big brands in terms of how they're moving from a fully digital strategy to what they would call an experiential strategy, meaning, you know, meetups, sponsoring events related to the brand. This is more on the consumer side, but you know, it's Gen Z. It's like the young Gen Zs that are asking for this because they've been so locked in digitally over, you know, much of their lives that they are craving more connection. I thought that was very interesting. The other thing that I'm seeing, you know, related to this topic more directly, a few different acquaintances of mine have recently gotten new jobs as event managers at B2B companies. So what does that mean? That means that these companies are on the road, they're going to industry shows, they're doing dinners, lunch and learns, they're bringing their buyers back into the live space. Now, this has been like, the stuff never really went away other than when everyone was at home for much of 2020. The first trade show that I was back to years back was summer of 2021. That was in Florida. So,
Okay, that was
you know,
early.
that was early. Like, but you know, there were other companies that went years without really doing concerted live events. And again, that's anecdotal, but the folks I know that have been able to earn these opportunities, and the fact that those postings are out there and there's more investment being made, I think that's a big indicator of moving towards a customer preference of I have to have some live connection. But that's part of the know, like, and trust. I've got to shake someone's hand, talk to them in person. I like to be able to do the dialogue back and forth. Hey, tell me about this, that, or the other when it comes to the offering. And then it builds that's the knowledge piece. But then to your other point, I will get a better sense if I like somebody, if I'm in the same space as them and get to know them a little bit better, and you know, shoot the breeze, talk golf, talk family stuff, whatever. And then the trust piece, just per my personal opinion, I would imagine that you feel the same way. Is that, you know, if unless I can go really deep with someone, and you know, just get that feel that we all have of like I have a great feeling about this person, and if he or she is trustworthy, I do think that that is much easier to do when you're in the same physical space as somebody.
Sure. Well, yeah, you mentioned 2020, but I I know from experience that COVID changed the way everybody looked at how business can or could be conducted.
Mhm.
Um, so you and I've been together several times, you know, outside of a business environment, and we've discussed this. And I just preach you have to meet the buyer where they are, not where you wish they were.
Mhm.
And another study showed that for the average B2B business, only 3% of your market is in buying mode at any given time. And a big thing to me is, and I preach this to my clients, is what do you do when you're focused on that 3%? What are you doing for the other 97%?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that those statistics ring true as well. And the thing is, if depending on how big or small your market is, because you can be a very successful company serving tens of millions of potential customers, you can be a very successful company serving thousands of potential customers. The issue is, though, is when you are in place with a solution or a service that meets a more niche need, that means the number of at bats you have is going to be smaller and smaller. So that's something you need to think about. But the way that you are basically servicing the customer journey of the 97% that are not ready to buy is that you are consistently in the marketplace with content, and you are focusing that content on the nature of the problem that your target customer is facing, that you have the expertise on and the solution to be able to solve that problem. And that is something that I learned years back, that was a very different lens with which to view marketing and sales, in the sense of, it used to be advertise your features, 4 Ps, promote, promote those as much as you can. And you still have to do that to some degree, but particularly in B2B, the problems that businesses find themselves running into, every business faces challenges every single day, and you're going to deal with the ones that are the most acute at that given time. But if there's that little problem that's going on in the background, and you say, all right, we'll address that at some point, but some point does come along for that business. So when it's there, it's like, all right, we have to act on this problem. We have to find a solution to that problem. What you want as a vendor, as the business, is to be front of mind. Like, I have problem X, and I'm aware that I've seen out there's a company that can solve problem X for me. The way that you become really tied in with problem X is presence and strong content within the decision make, or the research channels that your customers are living in. This is a hard work, by the way. Like, you have to do this up front. You have to understand who your customer is, where they go to make decisions, what is important to them, and then really take yourself out of the mode of promoting your solution, and put yourself in the mode of being an advisor, trusted advisor, to go back to the trust word, who understands the problem and can help solve it for that particular customer.
I believe it boils down sometimes to being as simple as, if your potential buyer doesn't believe they have a problem, you need to move on to the next person. Mm-hmm. Because buyers normally are going to want to buy a solution to a perceived problem.
Mm-hmm. That's all you do. I mean, you buy things at your perceived time of need when you have a perceived problem. Absolutely right.
And that goes back to the 95%. When you're in the 95% where your buyers aren't buying right now, that's where if you mentioned content, that's where you can provide valuable content, and that can build that trust that you're not building, by playing golf together anymore.
Right. And both of those steps are important, but the golf and the really getting to know somebody personally, that's that 3% or 5% that you mentioned before. So I wouldn't want people to think that it's an either or thing. It's an understanding that the amount of time investment you have to make with a potential customer is a lot longer, and it's going to happen before potentially even that customer is readily apparent to you.
The one thing that I believe, and I'll ask you if you've had some experience with this. You got, and I'm just exaggerating, you've got 25-year-olds selling 65-year-olds, and you got 65-year-olds selling 25-year-olds. And going back to you have to meet the buyer where they are. You and I have a mutual friend who shared a story with me that he thought he had a deal done. He thought they'd agreed to agree. It was about the details. And he sent the guy three emails, and the guy never responded. And our friend finally just called him, got him on the phone, said, "Hey, I've sent you 3 emails. Are you ghosting me?" And he said, "Well, what email address did you send it to?" And he told him the email address. And our friends, he said, "I never checked that email." And the lesson learned was, now when he gets to that agree to agree, he asks, "How is the best way for us to communicate?" Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of complicated things in business, but I think that's a pretty easy one.
It absolutely is. particularly when you're deep in funnel, you know, one to one with the decision maker it's interesting. It used to be, I think, part of the whole, you know, digitization, and we're going to really hyper optimize how we go through, you know, a sales process, and a lot of it was like more on the vendor's terms. Now, because of the wide range of preferences, I think there's generational influence on that, age influence, but there's also individual. There's just so many ways to get in touch with people that, yeah, if you're in sales, if you're an account executive in particular, you're running a deal, like, make sure that, you know, don't be afraid to ask, hey, can I call you? Can I text you? Would you rather just do it over email? You know, we have many tools that we can connect with, for which we can connect with people. Just make sure that you're clear with the prospect by using the right one.
Yep. All right. Just wrapping up here. Let's do a little rapid fire. I need like 30-second answers on these. What's one thing you would tell sales leaders to stop doing?
Stop demanding that marketing provide more leads without aligning on what the qualification process for those leads are. And that is something that sales and marketing leaders need to do regularly with each other.
And very few companies do that. Mm-hmm. All right, second question. One thing you would tell them they should start doing?
Sales leaders having meetings with your marketing counterpart at least once a week, and preferably talking with each other multiple times a week.
Yeah, we could do a whole show on why sales and marketing is just awful in the way that they communicate with each other in this day and time. Two more questions. Looking at today's market, what advice would you give a sales leader on how to grow right now?
Be willing to make an investment in brand building. And I would say this probably goes for executive leadership as well, but invest in brand building. And what I mean by that is you're allowing your marketing team to do more long-tailed work, which is what your company's point of view is on the problems that I alluded to earlier, of become an expert in what your company will solve for your target customer, and be very present and frequent in terms of the marketplace touches. And that's how you build a real brand. Obviously, the look and feel and colors and logos and all that stuff is very, very important. But to make the brand about byword with the problem solving, you have to make those investments too.
Last question. What would Patrick today tell Patrick of 10 years ago?
It's a hard question, because a little bit's happened in the last 10 years, technologically, socially, economically, et cetera. Every single day that you log onto your computer, or you go to the office or wherever, put yourselves in the shoes of that target customer and what he or she is thinking about that morning and over the course of that day, and how do you mirror what they need with what you provide at your company.
That's great. Is there any one thing you'd like to leave the audience with today, Patrick?
We're still in flux. New tools are going to come out. Things are going to continue to change. Economic situations are going to continue to unfold. You know, just take a deep breath. Don't feel like you need to master every single tool. Don't feel like you need to answer every single question. If you commit to strong fundamentals, some of which we've talked about on this live stream, and you have a good product that you're representing, you're going to be fine.
Thanks, Patrick. I appreciate you being on the show today. We thank. Oh, so the way you get in touch with Patrick is scrolling right now below. Tell us real quick, Patrick.
Reach out to me directly, Patrick at fourcrossadvisory.com, or hit the website fourcrossadvisory.com. I'm also there very frequently, so would love to connect with listeners via LinkedIn as well.
All right. Well, I want to thank the audience for watching today. We'll be back next Friday, 10 o'clock Eastern time. And remember this, your reputation walks through the door before you do, and reputation leads to revenue. And everyone listening can do that.